Today's guest is somebody that needs no introduction because I'm sure that she's given thousands of them at this stage. Well known for being the face of BBC World News and probably one of the most viral employees of the BBC. Maryam Moshiri, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm looking forward to having a great conversation. So, Maryam, I'm going to have to start with the virality that you've been able to accomplish with multiple different things. It's not just our countdown sequence that we had, but what I would love to get to know is why do you think that something like that did go viral, or all of any of your viral moments have gone viral? Do you feel it's because of people just need something that's a bit more relaxing whenever they're watching the 5 p.m. news?
I feel that's correct. I mean, ultimately, I feel that people enjoyed that, and they enjoy viral moments because at the moment in the current news cycle, things are so dark. The world is moving at a fast pace. People struggle to keep up with what's happening in the news. And I think anything even remotely humorous or funny. I'll give you an example. Imagine you're at Wimbledon tennis and a pigeon flies down onto the tennis court and the whole stadium, erupts and everyone starts laughing. I mean, ultimately it's just a pigeon, right? But because of the circumstance, people are in that audience, they're watching tennis, it's very intense, it's a serious game, it's the final of Wimbledon. They find that hilarity in that. And I feel a little bit of that. Also, I think, people gave me a bit of a pass on the middle finger incident, mainly because they know that, I am serious about news. I am a serious news presenter, but I'm also a human being. And I think being a human being and being like everyone else and people seeing themselves a little bit in you is really important. And before middle finger, I was kind of having a lot of fun on TV, but I just don't think it was very much picked up. I mean, the first big viral moment that ever happened to me was the moon moment, where I was trying to describe a supermoon and the producer put the wrong pictures in the news segment that we were doing. And so I just said, well, haven't got the supermoon pictures, here is what it looked like. And people just loved it. I don't know what it is. It's just people just love the unseriousness of some of the stuff that I do. And I'm a big believer in my own show on BBC News in the light and shade in news. I honestly feel that at the end of, let's say, a 1 hour programme where we've talked a lot about the conflict in the world and what's going on, people want to just decompress and relax. So I make sure at the end of every programme that I do, we have a few stories which will make people laugh, which will make people smile, make me look silly. I have no problem with that. And I think that's touched a nerve with people.
I will say your blobfish impression was spot on. I absolutely adore that video.
I'm not very good at impressions, but I just thought I've got the face of a blobfish. I've got that kind of look.
No, you don't. So you're being too harsh on yourself. On that point, whenever you decide, shall we say, go rogue, do you have producers screaming in your ear, just don't do it?
Yeah. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. Normally I have a director and a producer in my ear, and I'll say, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do the seagull impression off the back of this, and they'll be like, don't do it. And I'll be like, no, it'll be fun. Don't worry. I'm going to do it. And I do it. But they all know what to expect with me. And actually sometimes we'll have a story and my producer will say, and I have a brilliant producer, Caroline Brocklebank, who's the best producer in the BBC. And she'll say to me, look, there's a darts championship, world championship tonight. Why don't we get you a dartboard? Get a dart teacher and come and teach you how to do darts, and you can throw the darts and I'll be like, yeah, that's a really good idea, Caroline. And then I'll do it, and I'll obviously look stupid because I can't throw a dart for love nor money, but people get a laugh out of it.
I suspect that's why you're so good at your job and so beloved with people watching you, is because you bring that level of authenticity and a bit more light into people's living rooms. Or I
think people need it, and I have a lot of fun. And also I just think, I take news very seriously. So when I do news, I do it and I mean it. but I think there's also room for something else as well. And it's not so much entertainment, it's just kind of, a bit of positivity, a bit of something, uplifting to end on. Because I just feel that there is a big push now towards people turning away from news, getting very tired of what the news cycle has to offer. So that's what I think there's room for both. Not everyone agrees with me, mind, but I personally feel there's room for both. Add to that the fact that I don't take myself very seriously day to day, then you get all the kind of, little viral moments, and also all the things that I do that don't go viral. I do a lot of crazy stuff on my show that doesn't go viral. So yeah, I have fun. We have fun.
So would you say it was the middle finger that was seen around the world?
Oh yeah, the middle finger. Let me take myself back to that December morning when I was in that studio and I was just having a bit of fun with the director. She's an amazing director, and they always count you down the final 10 seconds. They count, it's for you, it's for the floor manager, it's for the whole gallery, so everyone knows that you're about to go on air. And I just was having a bit of fun, and she was so serious that day, so I just kind of thought, I'm just gonna have a bit of fun and start doing this counting down with her. And I was doing all that business, and for some reason, and I don't still to this day know why I did this, because I had done the countdown before, I'm going to admit this. I had done that before, but I'd always stopped at 3, put my hands down, gone super serious. This time, and I feel maybe it was because the producer who was in the gallery, who's a friend of mine, he's a really cool guy, and I was trying to maybe be a bit of a show-off. This is the problem. When you try showing off in life, it always gets you in trouble. So I feel I was trying to show off a bit to him, like show him that, look at me, I don't take it seriously, but then I can turn into... I was just being an idiot. And I didn't stop. I went to 1, and I don't know what made me turn my finger, but I just did it. And then I remember
Muscle memory.
My ear, oh my goodness. And I remember in my ear, the director said, that went out. Those were her words. And this is under the headline music. So I've done the headlines, live from London, this is BBC News. And then there's like bong bong, and shoot, that went out. So I read my lines, whatever the headlines were. And then when there was the kind of initial music to kickstart the show, my microphone goes down. So I said, no, it didn't. She said, yes, it did. And then my floor manager, who was with a trainee on that day, was running around trying to find the computer to look back to see if it had gone live. And then he realized it had, and my heart just sank. I thought, oh my, what have I done? Maryam, you are such an idiot, which I often say to myself.
I'm exactly the same, Maryam. So I suppose the question is, because you proceeded to do the news like a trooper, so
I did 3 hours.
What were the emotions?
Disappointment in myself. I don't know if you've ever had something catastrophic happen in your life, and in that moment you think back to the moment before it happened. What could you have done differently? Why did this happen? Why did I do this? I mean, all kinds of things. But fundamentally, I was doing a 3-hour news show, so I had to kind of push it out of my head. And we're very good at doing that in the world of news, because we have to. You can't sit there ruminating over what the argument you had with your husband in the morning, because ultimately that's unimportant. You've got to focus. So I managed to focus, got out of the show, immediately obviously went to my boss and told him, and we all spoke about it to the producer. I kind of hoped no one would notice. I know. I just thought no one's going to notice. But of course they did.
Yeah.
And by that evening, it had gone a little bit viral. And then the next morning, obviously I didn't sleep. So I went to bed thinking, this is the end of my career. This is the end. And my husband was like, this is the end of your career.
Oh, God.
And my mum was like, this is the end of your career. So, I went to bed thinking all this. And then in the morning, about 3 in the morning, I woke up, couldn't sleep. And I was getting texts from some of my buddies on BBC Breakfast News. And I was like, one of them would text, oh, I see it's in the Daily Mail online. Oh, I see it's in the Express online. Oh, the Mirror have covered it now. So I was getting all these texts from my breakfast buddy. And they were like, obviously saying, are you okay? Are you okay? And, don't worry, it'll blow over. And then the next morning I woke up and I wrote a tweet or an X post, whatever it's called now, to everyone. I just thought, I just need to explain what happened, exactly what happened. And I wrote, look, everyone, before the Top of the Pro, I was doing a countdown with my director, just having a bit of fun between friends. And the middle finger was meant for her, not for you. And I'm so sorry. And I just kind of wrote that tweet and went and had a shower, got ready to go to work. And by the time I came back to my phone, it had literally blown up. And there were so many people who were, don't worry, it's so fine, it's so natural, it's so human, you're having a laugh, we get the joke. It was complete opposite to how I thought the reaction would be. And I was so shocked by that. Obviously, I'm sure there were people who were negative, but I didn't really see any of that. Then about a week later, someone released the whole video, because there were actually a few people who said, oh, she's lying. Countdown from 10 to 0, please. She was giving the nation the middle finger. I mean, you know, there were people who thought that. And then a week later, I got a call from one of my bosses, and she said, someone's released the full video. And I just thought, oh no, this is all going to kick off again. But then the full video cemented the kind of, oh my goodness, I can't believe she was doing that. That's so funny. And it just literally just took off. And that's when it went even more crazy. And I got so much, you know, it's just like people just were like, oh my God, she's just having a laugh. This is hilarious. And I feel people needed it. You know, they needed it.
We've obviously got the facade of, you know, Walter Cronkite and those very, very, very serious times with the transatlantic accent and all of that sort of thing. So the authenticity that showed, it just gave a glimmer into this isn't just a talking head. This is a real person that actually has a bit of fun side. So
we have banter. We talk. You know, it's not always. Sometimes you just have to kind of, even yourself at work, have to decompress a bit. I just made the mistake of doing it in a live studio. I should have done it afterwards or before. Obviously, I've learnt my lesson. Obviously, it's never going to happen again. Maryam Moshiri is a good girl now, kind of. I mean, you know, I'm a good girl now. I'm not going to do that exact thing again.
Where I'd love to go to now, Maryam, is the power of the newsroom and sort of the high stakes element that there is there, because as you said, you do a 3-hour show, to which, full credit to you, you must be exhausted by the end of it. But how do you sort of balance the authority with reliability, especially in those high stakes breaking news moments? I'm assuming it's a team effort, but you're ultimately the one that's projecting it.
It's tough. I mean, I have a 2-hour show now, so that was a different show I was presenting then. But it's still very intense. And I think, if I'm going to be honest with you, never in my 25 years as a journalist have I seen a period that has been so chaotic and so uncertain in terms of the news cycle. And I think that feeds into so much, you know, into the way in which that we cover news stories and the way in which we think about things. And let me give you an example. In the summer, there was a week where we had that horrible school shooting in Austria. We had that Air India plane crash, which was appalling. We had the spending review in the UK. And then at the end of the week, the Iran-Israel conflict started, right? Every one of those stories in any given week would be the top story of the week. We had them all in one week. And you have to really kind of, you're pivoting from one thing to another, trying to make sure that you do these stories justice. You're balancing, you know, a news cycle that is just difficult to balance. It's difficult to juggle. So I think that we need to, at the BBC at least, focus on what we're very good at, which is being right, being correct, being factual rather than being first. And I think there's a big push nowadays to be, you know, to break the news as quickly as you can. And obviously we want to do that. We want to bring you the news as soon as we can. If you have the BBC push notification on your phone, you'll know that. But I think it's also important to make sure that we relay the story in a correct manner to people. We do it justice, we give it the time that it needs, but also that we don't assume knowledge. And that's another thing about, you know, being authoritative in a time of chaos, is authority also means understanding that not everyone knows what you're talking about. So again, on my show and on the old programs we do, we have a very big focus on explaining things. And actually those explainers are very popular. You know, my colleague Ros Atkins, analysis editor at the BBC, he has just exploded on the scene because he does these brilliant explainers where he strips stories back to the basics So, for example, if I'm doing a story on US tariffs, I always make sure within that sequence, I explain exactly what tariffs are.
Yeah.
And it might be that I've explained it to you for the millionth time, but there'll be someone watching who doesn't quite understand it.
Yeah.
Ditto when we're talking about genocide, the story recently about the UN Commission of Inquiry calling what's happening in Gaza genocide. Again and again, we wanted to explain to the audience what genocide means, how it's defined. So everything is chaotic, but I think at the BBC we try to bring that clarity, that factual element and that authority in a way that brings the audience to us, basically.
Yeah. So there's obviously the breaking news stories that a breaking news story just by its very nature is a changing news story. So how do you manage the processing that information, distilling that information, and getting it to people again with that authority, knowing that that it's an evolving situation?
Well, you always have to be very careful, when things are evolving, when there's a breaking news story, be really careful about what you're saying. And you don't say something unless you're sure of it. So you don't kind of, if there's a plane crash, for example, you don't say, well, that plane crash, clearly it was engine failure or, pilot failure, or, you have to be very, very careful because stories, as you said, do evolve. And I think you have to also be aware, like at the BBC, we're very lucky because we have a huge network of global correspondents around the world. We have BBC Monitoring, which monitors what's happening, in terms of online. We have people who monitor what's happening in specific countries. So we rely very much on those elements to make sure that as a story is evolving, we are there. We don't just kind of report on it, but we're there where the story is happening. And I think that helps having such a huge network as well.
How you manage that mentally, because the things that a lot of us can make the choice of stepping away from the news, not going on X, not going on Instagram, not going on TikTok, but that's not something that you can do. So from a personal perspective, how do you process because as we've discussed, there's a lot of dark, sinister, sad, horrific stories that you cover just by the nature of your role. So how do you manage and sort of try and disconnect if you do, or I suppose what I'm asking is, how do you manage?
It's really hard. It's really hard. I mean, you'd ask the same question of a doctor, right? Of an A&E doctor or a paramedic, and I think they'd tell you, well, over time, you don't get used to it. You never get used to it, but you learn to cope. The hardest job in journalism is not really the presenter so much as the picture producer, because the picture producers get all the raw footage and they have to sift through that footage and cut pictures that then are sanitized for the audience. As far as I'm concerned, I have seen things that I can't unsee. It's very hard. It's really hard. And I think one of the things that I do is, my husband's also a journalist. He's an editor-in-chief of a very small publication, but he kind of gets it. So we do talk a lot about things. I'll come home at the end of the day and we'll talk about what I've seen, what I've talked about, the big story of the day. I mean, there's so much darkness out there right now with the war in Gaza, the war in Ukraine. It's just a very difficult time. And I think that talking about it, being able to be also in a newsroom environment with other people where you're all kind of going through the same thing. Someone said to me recently at the BBC when we were talking about seeing videos and seeing video footage of really horrible things, she said to me, I've heard, apparently, that playing Tetris, as soon as you've seen something horrible, helps, because it stops your brain, your kind of the wires inside your brain from imprinting those images. So trying to find something else to do. I mean, I've never tried it. This is what she said. Just kind of, if you see something horrible, just try and play a computer game like Tetris, where you're taking your mind off what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure if that works, but I feel personally talking about it, being in an environment where everyone's in the same boat, really helps. But yeah, you're right. It is really hard. But I've been doing this job for 25 years, the very first big story I did was 9/11. So I was a very young reporter in radio in those days. And I remember having to speak to some employees of this company called Cantor Fitzgerald, and they had offices in one of the higher floors of one of the towers. And they lost pretty much most of their employees that day. And I remember talking to one of the bosses of that company, and it was just so difficult. And I've never forgotten it. I've never forgotten that feeling. And actually, one of the hardest things is not only watching horrible images, which you do on a daily basis, but it's also talking to people who've been through trauma.
Yeah.
Talking to, the person who has lost someone to COVID, talking to the person whose daughter died of cancer. Those stories actually, for me, and those interviews hit me a lot more than interviewing, anyone important. They're the ones that stay with me. And I feel that if you keep telling yourself that ultimately your job is to tell the story, tell the world what's happening, I think that also helps you come to terms with what you're doing.
People don't see the human element for the news teams that are bringing this. They're doing the public service of bringing things that we need to know about and we should be aware of. But the indirect trauma that the likes of yourselves and your team face when you're actually doing that, I don't think it's something that people really think about, and they'll catch on to the viral moment, but that viral moment may have been a release from something that you were processing on that day that was incredibly traumatic, and you're seeing a lot more of the raw information and the raw pictures and footage. It's incredibly difficult to even imagine being in your shoes or your team's shoes from that regard.
After many, many years of covering stories like this, you do kind of develop a way of coping. I'd say that's probably the best way to describe it. You don't get used to it, you just develop a way of coping.
Yeah.
And you're doing a job, right? So that kind of helps as well.
So I suppose with the chaotic world that we live in now, Maryam, the shifting tone of news delivery in 2025, what do you feel that audiences expect?
It's a tough period for news. It's really very busy. Before one story ends, another one starts. I think that there's an expectation now from people that they don't want to be told what the big news stories of the day are. They want to be given what they think are the big news stories. So we need to take the news to the audience rather than kind of tell them what they should be looking at. So we need to give them choice. That's the main thing, choice, in a way that we haven't before. And for example, at the BBC, we've developed and are developing our streaming platform with this exact thing in mind. So as an audience, if you're watching at home and there's a football parade for Liverpool fans, or there's a rugby parade for the Welsh, rugby team, you have the choice to watch that because we'll provide that for you on our streaming service. You can watch it on your phone, you can watch it on the iPlayer. We can feed you the story directly. It's like a one-stop shop to audiences for the story that you want, rather than the core news outlet, which is my program, where I'm, going through the big stories of the day. And I feel that this gives audience choice, and that's one of the things they really, really want. The other thing they want, so they don't want to be dictated to. They don't want us to decide, these are the stories you need to watch. They want to be able to see what they want to see, and to have it straight away, and to have it on their phones. The other big thing, I think, is at the moment we're living in a world where there is so much disinformation, and there is a huge, huge market out there for fact-based news, right, rather than opinion-based news. And, especially in the USA, in America, where there's so much polarization, they have a very extreme form of journalism in America, which we don't have so much. It's very different. And I think that's what gives the BBC an edge over competitors in America. In fact, I think in the latest Reuters Institute for Journalism report, they showed that the BBC was the most trusted news outlet in America after local and regional news outlets. And one of the reasons for that is because we provide people with the facts and we let people decide what they want to think off the back of those facts. And I think that's a very different way of doing things. And I also think that our verify department, the way that we verify news now, and I know people say, well, you know, don't you always verify journalism? But actually, I think there's a whole lot of really, you know, misinformed stuff out there that people are being given, and that we need to actually focus on that. And there's a big demand for that. So I'll give you another example very quickly. Our verify team, and that team was started about just over a year ago, they will, you know, trawl the internet for video and news and information, and they'll verify or not what's out there. So a good example is when the Israel-Iran conflict began, there was a video that was going all around. It was like 4 million views of these explosions in Iran. But that video was from the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And we, through geolocating, through technology, verified that and put that out. You know, we verified that that wasn't real, that video. It was a video from, you know, 40 odd years ago. So I think, in answer to your question, to shorten the answer, I think people want the news they want. They want it quickly. They want it in a mobile way, and they want facts. They want the truth. They don't want, you know, there's a lot of news out there, and they want it to be verified and factual and true. And I think there's a big demand for that.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. So I suppose just to wrap things up and wrap up our time together, Maryam, if you weren't a news presenter or a journalist, what is something that you'd secretly love to be doing?
Barrister. I wanted to be a barrister. Like at one point I was like, when I was younger, it was journalism and news presenting that I ultimately loved. But when I was quite young, I was kind of flitting between doing law and being like a human rights barrister or being a journalist.
Yeah.
So, but I went for journalism.
Perfect.
I've always wanted to be a news presenter ever since I was a kid. I think I was 13, 14 when I decided this is what I want to do. Myself
and my partner did it's called the news presenter challenge, where it's TikTok, where you have to read the entire thing in a newscaster's voice, and to say we got through like maybe 3 lines without.
But the way you're sitting, you're kind of like your posture, everything. You've got newsreader vibes. You're giving me newsreader. Your hands are like crossed in front of you. You're giving me newsreader big time.
Perfect. Well, I take that. I take that as a compliment from you, Maryam Moshiri, the legend, the voice of BBC Breaking News, and just an incredible person at bringing facts and facts with authority to a nation that needs it. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you so much for joining us.
It's so kind of you. Thank you. I don't feel like I'm a legend. I feel like I'm just like a normal middle-aged mother of 3. But thank you.
Thank you so much.